whose endorsement has more centrist gravitas than any other endorsement in the nation? I would argue that that person is Colin Powell, same as in 2008. And that's why Colin Powell's remarks today on CBS endorsing President Obama were important, not just for the fact that he endorsed President Obama, but for the way that he explained his decision.
Will you endorse President Obama this race?
Well, you know, I voted for him in 2008, and I plan to stick with him in 2012, and I'll be voting for he and for Vice President Joe Biden next month. Not only am I not comfortable with what Governor Romney is proposing for his economic plan, I have concerns about his views on foreign policy. I mean, it's a moving target. One day he has a certain strong view about staying in Afghanistan, but then on Monday night he agrees with the withdrawal. Same thing in Iraq. And almost every issue that was discussed on Monday night, Governor Romney agreed with the president with some nuances. But this is quite a different set of foreign policy views than he had earlier in the campaign. And my concern, which I've expressed previously in a public way, is that sometimes I don't sense that he has thought through these issues as thoroughly as he should have. There are other issues as well, not just the economy and foreign policy. I'm more comfortable with President Obama and his administration when it comes to issues like what are we going to do about climate? What are we going to do about immigration? What are we going to do about education? Lots of things like that. I also saw the president get us out of one war, start to get us out of a second war, and did not get us into any new wars. And finally, I think that the actions he has taken with respect to protecting us from terrorism have been very, very solid. And so I think we ought to keep on the track that we are on.
You know, there are lots of newspapers who are making their endorsements these days. The Washington Post, for example, also endorsed President Obama today. There will be other previous politicians, current politicians, and just famous people in America who make endorsements between now and Election Day. But to my mind, this endorsement today from Colin Powell is the only one that has any real political heft that anybody was waiting for, particularly because of the way it might appeal to people who hadn't otherwise made up their mind but might vote between now and November 6th or on Election Day. That said, consider the other side. Tonight is the Mitt Romney-Glenn Beck event, after all.
What is wrong with us, America? Why are people not in the streets? Your republic is over.
That was about Wall Street reform. Yeah, Dodd-Frank. Remember when that ended the country? Sorry. Amazing. Joining us now is Frank Rich, New York Magazine's writer-at-large. Frank, thank you for being here.
Great to be here, as always.
I love the opportunity to trip down Glenn Beck memory lane.
Oh, and this is just the tip of an insane iceberg, I might add.
Well, I am amazed to see him come back into presidential politics. I've been thinking about this week with the Donald Trump stupidity, right? Donald Trump has his latest insulting publicity stunt. And the thing that is lost on everybody in wanting to not even talk about it is that Donald Trump has been brought to the center of the Mitt Romney campaign. He does fundraisers with him. They do joint appearances together. Paul Ryan and Donald Trump were doing a joint appearance in New York City just a couple of weeks ago. And now Glenn Beck is doing a gala fundraiser with Dick Cheney with 12 days to go before the election. I can't.
Well, first of all, the Glenn Beck things to me suggests he's still trying to win over the base of the Republican Party, or the craziest part of the base. But as you indicated, Romney is trying to hide his real positions, have this mask of moderation. He's running a pseudo pro-choice, I don't even want to dignify it with that label, ad. And so he's trying to, put Murdoch in the closet with Aiken, and yet it's all undone by appearance by Glenn Beck or Donald Trump. At the same time, on the foreign policy front, after presenting himself in the last debate as a peacenik who, I guess, I don't want to have another Iraq or Afghanistan. He took back every single position. This is, of course, what Colin Powell was alluding to be involved with Dick Cheney completely undoes that. Dick Cheney is the foreign policy he was supposedly disowning last week.
That's why I feel like this is important, because I feel like the way the Beltway is talking about this and the way that Mitt Romney as a politician is being communicated to the country right now is that he has pivoted to the center. He is showing his moderate side. He had to appear to be conservative in order to get the nomination, but now he wants the country to know how moderate he is. It's not actually what he's doing. He's doing a kitchen sink approach where he's doing everything all at once, because he's still doing Dick Cheney, Glenn Beck, sending Paul Ryan to Alabama and all these other places where he can speak freely.
Exactly.
While he's making the moderation turn at the same time. That can't be tenable.
No, and if people want to follow, no one knows who the real Mitt Romney is. As he's a hologram, really, and it changes every other minute, and we all know that. But I would say if a voter who's undecided wants an indicator of who he is, look at Paul Ryan, who, as you say, is now being in the witness protection program for the next 10 days, so people won't look at him. But that's the guy who's going to be calling the shots, the ideological shots in a Romney administration, should there be one. That is the hard right of the party. The Ryan budget, his plans for the entitlements, all of that is the blueprint of what a Romney administration would be, no matter what Romney is saying now or what clowns he's palling around with or what moderation he's trying.
Colin Powell, the endorsement of President Obama today, came with a bit of an indictment of Mitt Romney's changing views. Specifically, he called out the neoconservatives surrounding Romney and advising him. I was waiting for this endorsement, in part because I did not know where it was going to go, and I felt like it was significant in 2008. Do you think this is a significant endorsement?
Yes, not as significant in 2000 as it was in 2012 as it was in 2008, because McCain actually was a military guy. Yeah. So for Powell to undercut him was something else. And, Powell's not been as prominent in the public scene even now as he was then. But he was so good at explaining his reasons, and to the extent that he's so logical and rational. And look, this guy knows from neocons. They're the ones that fed him the lies, essentially, about Saddam Hussein's WMD that he then had to sell to the United Nations to grease the skids for the war in Iraq. So he speaks with real passion, I think, about it. And if people listen to him, I think it will have an effect.
Yeah, given those people, I just read Kofi Annan's book because I had him here on the show last week. And Kofi Annan talks about, he opens and closes his book with the Colin Powell at the UN experience. And he talks about how the Bush administration took Colin Powell's credibility, wrung it out, used it for what they needed to do, and then discarded them as soon as they had used his credibility for what they wanted to do. And for Colin Powell, as you say, he knows from whence he speaks when he looks at these guys.
He does. And, he himself has said it was one of the biggest mistakes, if not the biggest mistake of his career. And the extent that his star is diminished in terms of an endorsement is exactly because he did that. But he was certainly powerful in this endorsement.
One last question for you. If it is basically a tie heading into Election Day, do you think a tie favors the incumbent or the challenger?
I think it favors the incumbent. It seems to me this election is baked, barring some event we don't know. And yes, there is this small undecided vote. I think it's about get out the vote. And if you believe the Romney campaign, they have a much better get out the vote program in Ohio because they're doing much more than was done by McCain 4 years ago. They're not measuring it against Obama and the Democrats. And I think that's what it's about now. And I think Glenn Beck is a pathetic effort on the Romney campaign part to get out some crude part of the base.
Call me crazy. Go to hell. Call me crazy.
That little rabbit, he looked like Dr. No in the Bond movie, didn't he?
I was so hoping it was a fake rabbit until it moved. Oh, no, it's alive.
Maybe Goldfinger. I can't remember which anymore, but yeah.
Frank Rich, New York Magazine's writer-at-large. Thank you for being here, Frank. It's always great to have you here.
Great to be here. Thank you.
All right, stay tuned. We've got Chris Hayes ahead and what Frank just said about get out the vote and what that means and how it works between now and the 6th. That's next. You want to see something that is just inherently, viscerally, simply satisfying? Something you can just relax into and let it just wash over you? Here you go.
Now, you endorsed Governor Romney.
I did.
Are you in contact with him all the time?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. What do you guys talk about?
Just general. I tell you what, he has a stance on China which is a country that's just ripping our heart out. I mean, we just do nothing to protect ourselves, that I really like.
As a line of clothing. Now, where were these made?
These were made, I don't know where they were made, but they were made someplace. But they're great. It's ties, shirts, cufflinks, everything sold at Macy's, and they're doing great. #1 selling tie anywhere in the world.
Ties? Where are the ties
They
made?
have to work
These are
too.
beautiful ties.
They are great ties.
The ties are made in where? China? China. Ties are made in China.
That look on Donald Trump's face is worth 1 million gold-plated Midtown office towers. That is worth the price of whatever empathetic impulse you have toward your fellow human being, Donald Trump. Whatever price you pay in ghostly, empathetic shame, just for the pleasure of seeing his actual shame at having that issue resolved that way on national TV. You do not have to dislike Donald Trump as a person to be ineffably satisfied with seeing this lie of his unraveled, right? I mean, because it is a kind of lie implicitly to make it seem in one moment like you're the guy who'd be super tough on China in business terms and economic terms. You're the guy who would stop China from ripping America's heart out, while you are also the guy who is making his self-branded neckwear in China, right? That is a kind of lie. I mean, in polite circles, you might refer to that sort of moral pretzeling as hypocrisy. But if you just want to speak more bluntly and spare more syllables, it is a kind of lie. To portray yourself as bravely standing up for some particular thing when you don't particularly stand for that thing at all. The same thing happened last month, when Republican presidential nominee Mitt Romney held a business roundtable in Bedford Heights, Ohio. He did it at a plant in that town called American Spring Wire. American Spring Wire bills itself as North America's largest manufacturer of valve and commercial quality sprint wire. They also make something called PC strand, which is pre-stressed concrete strand. At his visit to American Spring Wire, Mr. Romney hammered away at President Obama for not being tough on China. Not the way that he, Mitt Romney, would be tough on China. But the company Mr. Romney chose for his backdrop that day, the company that he chose to implicitly help him make that case, so happened to be a poster child for success by President Obama in getting tough on China. In 2009, in the first months of Mr. Obama's presidency, American Spring Wire joined with 2 other makers of steel wire to ask for help. They said China was unfairly dumping steel wire in the United States market at artificially low prices. They asked for help. Under President Obama, the Commerce Department said they would investigate, and then the Commerce Department did move to protect American Spring Wire. They did crack down on China for dumping their underpriced product, thus benefiting American Spring Wire in exactly the way they had asked to be benefited. They got the help they wanted. A company that was then used as a backdrop for Mitt Romney saying President Obama had not been tough on China. Today, Mr. Romney gave what his campaign billed as a major address on economic policy. This is part of his closing argument for the presidency. He delivered the speech at a company called Kinsler Construction Services. And in this speech, Mr. Romney argued that President Obama's stimulus had failed to help private companies.
A new stimulus, 3 years after the recession officially ended, that may spare government, but it won't stimulate the private sector any better than did the stimulus of 4 years ago.
That's what Mitt Romney said today on the campaign trail at Kinsler Construction Services in Ames, Iowa. You know that blissful moment when you're waiting for the other shoe to drop? When you can see Dave Letterman scrutinizing the ties to look for the tag to see where it's made? You know you're in that moment right now? As noted at Think Progress today, Kinsler Construction Services benefited from almost $700,000 from the stimulus that Mr. Romney says did no good for any companies in the private sector. You can try to make the argument that the stimulus program did not help private businesses, even though the evidence shows the opposite is true. But when you're trying to make that false argument that the stimulus program didn't help any